What is up, boys and girls? Chris Fluke here, the Weekly Word, January 15th edition. This is the second week we're doing this. I'm trying to run one of these off every Wednesday of the year in the year 2020. Now, last week we talked about New Year's resolutions and all that stuff. I'm slowly but surely getting mine in order. I want to hit 80%. I want to hit a salad a day for 80% of the days over the course of a year. Right now I'm sitting at about 66%, which means I need to get a little bit better and start eating more salads. I need a week of 7 for 7 to kind of get me back on track. Now, another thing, trying to challenge myself with a few things this year. I'm trying to pick up a language. I restarted this thing on Duolingo.com, French, trying to get that going. Relearning the basics, we'll say. And also, I've got 4 appointments, 4 piano lessons. Never played an instrument in my life. I'm just gonna dive right in and try to figure out this piano thing. See if I can put a few songs together. Then maybe when my daughter gets a little bit older and she's playing the piano, we could become the world's greatest father-daughter duo ever to play. Just kidding. But I want to be able to learn how to play. I think it'll be good for the dexterity, good for the brain. Trying to learn a new skill, learn a new talent, and I'm gonna attack it that way. Now, this time of year we got all kinds of stuff going on. Lack of sleep. People are getting sick like crazy, germs galore, temperatures warm one day, cold the next day. It was just 60 degrees over the weekend. Yesterday it was like 30 degrees. I don't know what's going on in Pennsylvania, but there's some craziness, and I gotta admit, I'm a little beat up from it. I got a workout in 2 days ago. I'm super sore. I slept terrible over the weekend. I just woke up at these random hours over the weekend, and I couldn't fall back asleep. So like Sunday night into Monday, I woke up, it was like 2:30, let our dog out, try to go back to bed for like an hour and a half, fail. So I'm like, no, not even hour probably. It's like 3:30, 3:40 in the morning, and I'm just gonna get up, and got up, started doing a little bit of work, some of these little tedious tasks that I don't do a good job of keeping up with. Did that while everybody else was sleeping, so I tried to turn it into a productive thing. But that being said, worked out that day. I feel like I got a little cold going on. I wasn't sleeping. I'm like, man, this stuff's all connected. At least it's got to be. So we got to take care of ourselves, especially this time of year in the winter now. Which brings me to big time question of the week at the gym. It's a dark one. It gets a little deep on us, but it's kind of this whole nature-nurture debate where, some people I think are born a certain way, right? I think we could all agree with that. So I'm like, there's a show at Dexter. I've never watched it. Apparently this is kind of the premise, but it's like people are born a certain way. Like, somebody might harm an animal when they're 6, and you're like, where does this even come from? There might be something going on biologically there that we don't quite yet understand. But people are born to do awful things. I think that's possible. I also think environment kind of creates that, but it's almost like the perfect storm with everything, whether it's athletic development. I'm reading this book now called Gifted Children that I'll get to a little bit later, which is a little bit more brain power. So we're talking about athletic achievement. We're talking about being able to do things, a kid graduating from college by the age of 10. But then on the flip side, those people that do dark, dirty things to people, and it's like, biologically there needs to be something there. That's like the hardware, the stuff that you're born with. That's the stuff that's ingrained. Those patterns are ingrained in you, and then there's the software. That's the downloadable stuff that kind of we get from our environment. And the only way for our biology, the only way our environment can enhance what we do is if we kind of have that biology in us, some of that biological, those factors, those brain wirings, whatever. The environment is going to enhance those things further. And that was just kind of the question. It's like, do you think there's people walking around out there in the streets that are like, they were kind of ingrained, they were born to like kill somebody and be like the Ted Bundy, but yet they fight that urge every day, and like they have to live this existence of like fighting their urges? Like, I think that would be crazy. And I talked to a woman who happens to work in the court system at a pretty high level, and she's like, you know what, those feelings, they eventually went out, and people end up committing crimes. So maybe my hypothetical doesn't really exist because they just become criminals anyway. But like, I was just thinking, man, is there somebody out there that I know, somebody that I just passed at the grocery store, somebody that I train, somebody that comes into this gym that was born to be a killer, and they fight that urge every day? Why am I thinking about that? I don't have a clue. I heard a conversation on a podcast, and it triggered my thoughts. So that's why we're working with that for the question of the week. So if you come into this gym here, you better be on your toes here, because we're coming at you with craziness. which leads me to another part here. You know, Jordan Peterson once said, man, there's nothing more dangerous than a weak man. And when you talk about people that act out and do some of these things, they're not the ones that are like the most strong person mentally. When we're talking about weakness, we're not talking about physical weakness. We're talking about maybe psychologically a little bit weak, mentally a little bit weak, not feeling so good about themselves, want to go in kind of a self-destruction mode, or they want to start destructing other people's lives. Strong men, strong women, they don't do that stuff. It's the weak person. So when Jordan Peterson, I mean, it's a quote that I might even put up on this wall here, because, you know, it's more about than just building your body up to be this strong, incredible thing. It's about building the mind to a certain level here where you don't need to rely on your physical brute strength, say, to get you to where you need to get to. It's your brain that's going to get you there. And it's kind of treating people good. It's taking care of people. It's having some confidence in yourself. It's doing the things that you want to do. It's having the courage to speak up when things are bad. That's what the strong individual does. The weak individual will just kind of bite their tongue, let things fester, to a point where things get very dangerous and they could get very destructive. So, just a little quick reminder, you know, there is darkness out there, and we just need to know that we're fully capable of going down those paths. I'm capable of being a weak man just as I'm as capable of being a strong man. And I need to understand that, because there's going to be ebbs and flows. There's going to be times of strength and times of weakness. And when there are those times of weakness, don't accept that as your calling. Work on trying to get back, trying to get your mindset right, and trying to get back on the path, because it's going to be happening throughout the rest of your life. The more you start practicing it now, the more you start getting yourself back on the path as soon as possible, the better you're going to be in the long run. Which brings me to the next part of this stuff. Little short story. So I saw my friend Kyle Shannon. He's got a great business, KSP Fit in Bethlehem. That gym is popping. And you know, one of his clients told him a story, not a story, just kind of repeated something that he once read, and it was it's called the Businessman and the Fisherman. If you do a search at Paulo Coelho, the guy that wrote The Alchemist, he ends up linking it up here. It's on his website. I don't even know how to pronounce his last name, so I'm not even going to try it again. Just search the author of The Alchemist, blog.com, and it's there. The Businessman and the Fisherman. So, story goes like this. There was once a businessman who was sitting by the beach in a small Brazilian village. As he sat, he saw the Brazilian fisherman rowing a small boat towards the shore, having caught quite a few big fish. The businessman was impressed and asked the fisherman, "How long does it take you to catch so many fish?" The fisherman replied, "Oh, just a short while." "Then why don't you stay longer at sea and catch even more?" The businessman was astonished. "There's enough to feed my whole family," the fisherman said. The businessman then asked, "So what do you do for the rest of the day?" The fisherman replied, "Well, I usually wake up early in the morning, go out to sea and catch a few fish, then go back and play with my kids. In the afternoon, I take a nap with my wife, and evening comes, I join my buddies in the village for a drink. We play guitar, sing, and dance throughout the night." The businessman offered a suggestion to the fisherman. "I'm a PhD in business management. I could help you to become a more successful person. From now on, you should spend more time at sea and try to catch as many fish as possible. When you have saved enough money, you could buy a bigger boat and catch even more fish. Soon you'll be able to afford to buy more boats. Set up your own company, your own production plant for canned food and distribution network. By then, you will have moved out of this village into Sao Paulo, where you can set up headquarters to manage your other branches." The fisherman continues, "And after that," the businessman laughs heartily, "after that you can live like a king in your own house, and when the time is right you could go to public and float your shares in stock exchange, and you will be rich." The fisherman asks, "And after that?" The businessman says, "After that you could finally retire, you can move to a house by the fishing village, wake up early in the morning, catch a few fish, then return home to play with kids, have a nice afternoon nap with your wife, and when evening comes, you can join your buddies for a drink, play guitar, sing, dance throughout the night." The fisherman was puzzled. "Isn't that what I'm doing now?" So, awesome story, right? It's all about kind of perspective and what you want to accomplish with your life. Do you want to work like a dog so when you're 60 you could retire and you could enjoy your leisurely days then? Or do you want to kind of mix in your leisurely in each and every day of your life? So, you know, the businessman in this story, he's all about profit. He's all about making money. He's all about building this incredible network. And he defined success by his business. Whereas the other man just wanted to be happy. He wanted to provide enough for his family. He wanted to have enough time for leisure. He wanted to spend some time with his kids, play guitar, dance, drink in the evenings, and all this other stuff. And to be quite honest with you, the fisherman's living, it sounds like the fisherman is living a life that I want to kind of emulate. So shout out to that guy. It's an old Brazilian story, short story. You know, it's good to probably read something like this every so often and kind of get your mindset back to where it needs to be, and you know, start thinking about the big picture in life. And it's not always about these short-term wins. I need to make as much money as I can right now, because at the end of the day, you might not be here at the end of the day, if you catch my drift. So try to enjoy each day and each moment, and live life to its fullest each and every day. Bam! Moving on here, I'm reading a new book. It's called Gifted Children. I alluded to it earlier. This book's kind of crazy. I'm just getting into it. You know, we talked about mathematics, science achievement so far in it. Now we're talking about artistic achievement. You know, they're showing drawings of what some of these kids are able to do at, you know, 19 months, not quite 2 years old. And they compare a side-by-side picture. It's like the average kid, and then these kids that were born with this artistic ability. And it's pretty mind-blowing. You know, this one little kid, he's under 2. He's drawing pictures of women in like these fancy dresses with the, you know, the dress kind of swirling in the wind. Another one, there's like a woman in like this old like Victorian era type pose looking at the camera. And these kids are doing it based off of what they see. Well, like one time, then they're kind of drawing it off memory. And then other times too, which separates these gifted kids from the others, is that, you know, they're able to actually perceive what they see and draw it. Whereas some of the other kids would like look once, then just start making a bunch of circles, bunch of randomness. Their hair looks like, I don't even know what, spaghetti just coming off. And the other kid's got like this nice waving, curly, swirly hair. So cool book, crazy. I'm just getting into it. But two things actually, that really stood out. Gender differences in math and science IQ scores at a young age is pretty astronomical. That's number one. That kind of stood out. It's like, is there some sort of gender bias, so to speak, with that, or do we create a culture that enhances or embraces males to really adapt into those two fields? Because in Japan, you know, Japan say the ratio from is 4-to-1 boy to girl in achieving a certain IQ past, I don't know the number, 7 or 750, I don't know. And sorry, SAT score in one of the things was like over 700. The ratio is 4-to-1 in Japanese culture, but like 17-to-1 in American culture. And it's like, so is that culture different and that's why it is that way? Or is that some sort of outlier for other reasons that we don't even know about? But that was the first thing. The second thing is, you know, kids that are being, I guess, diagnosed with hyperactive children, ADD, ADHD. You know, the author of this book was just like, you know what, these kids are kind of bored. That's what's going on here. And we need to kind of increase, and we need to challenge them more throughout the day when they're in school. You know, these gifted programs in school, these programs are fine for a majority of the kids, but then there's even more kids that need different levels of training. There's gifted programs that need to be there for the arts and some of these other things. And, you know, as the author says here, you know, such children are stimulus seekers. If they are not sufficiently stimulated, they will produce stimulation for themselves with activity, and this activity could be negative, right? You know, I see that with my young daughter who's not even 2 yet. She's a stimulus seeker. She needs to be doing things. She needs to be learning things. You see it in her face. You see her brain working through different things. When my daughter becomes 5, 7, 9, 11, she's still going to be needing a stimulus to kind of grab her attention, and I need to provide that as a parent. I think schools need to provide that. I think athletic coaches need to provide that. If you're not providing adequate stimulus for these kids, they're going to be out there trying to pursue ways to stimulate themselves, and they might not always be positive. But on the flip side of that too, you know, there are kids that have this, you know, they're hyper activity-seeking individuals. And, you know, some of these kids, they try desperately, but they're unable to screen out irrelevant background information. So it's a kid that is just trying so hard, you know, to pay attention and to listen, but he's got all this stuff or she's got all this stuff going on in their brain that they just have a hard time sitting there focusing, and they're seeking out. So I'm not saying that this stuff doesn't exist. It does. And I couldn't even imagine, you know, a young kid trying desperately but being unable to do something, you know, trying desperately to focus on what the teacher's saying, but being unable to do that. I think that is kind of scary, and having those thoughts in my head as an adult is scary, but not think about a 5 or 6 or 7-year-old trying to navigate those thoughts and those feelings throughout the day. It's pretty scary, pretty sad actually, and I kind of feel for them. I don't know if I should or not, but I do, just because they're doing their thing. They could be super happy, but just in that one environment, they just might not be able to handle it. So kind of cool, and crazy at the same time. This book, it's very interesting, and don't know my train of thought that led me to this book, but I'm glad I'm reading it because it kind of helps me understand certain situations, talking with people, talking to parents of children that might be on this gifted, that might kind of fit into this category. It's pretty cool. Moving on to my quote of the week, guys. Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, great book. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Believe that. There's a stimulus, there's our response. In between that's where we live, and that is what is going to make or break us, because that's the area that decides which way we're going to respond. It's a pretty cool quote. Man's Search for Meaning is a great book. This man chose his response to the stimulus he was given. He was in a concentration camp. He watched guys. He knew when people were going to perish because their whole mindset changed. He decided, I have one choice and one choice only, and that is my response to every situation here. And he didn't let those guards, he didn't let those those concentration camp individuals, he didn't let those guys take that choice, take that freedom of choice away from him. Great book, great enlightening book, we'll say. And then lastly, what's going on here at the gym? I'm running a seminar February 23rd at the gym here. It's for coaches, it's for parents. There's a lot of stuff out there, a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of bad advice out there. You got coaches, you got club coaches. Everybody's selfish. Everybody's telling you your kid needs to do this, this, and this. He needs to wrestle all year round. They need to join this volleyball club or they're not going to make it to college. If they're not a part of this lacrosse organization, it's really going to set them back. If they're not playing futsal, they're not going to get that college scholarship, all this crap. This seminar is going to help navigate that. It's for coaches, it's for parents. That's one thing we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about injury rates. We're going to talk about ways to reduce injury, and then at the end of the day, we're going to just pretty much. I'm going to be giving you a training program, phase 1 of whatever we do here: speed, agility, jump training, medicine ball training, strength training, conditioning training, all this stuff for the kids. From different age groups, from anywhere from 5 to 10 in one group, and then 11 and up in another group. I'm going to be giving you this stuff. I'll give you a hard copy or whatever. This event is on Eventbrite. It's also it's going to be up on the website, brickhousestrength.com. Putting the finishing touches on that right now, so it's not there yet. Give me a day or two. So all this stuff, man, basically what it's going to be doing is just trying to educate coaches, educate parents. I'm just going to give them my opinion on some things. A lot of people come in and ask for my opinion. This will give us an opportunity to kind of sit down as a group and kind of troubleshoot this thing, bring up questions, have other parents there. And it'll let you, other parents and coaches, know what others are experiencing. You might not be the only one. You got this coach that is just telling you one thing over and over and over again, and it's just going to be enlightening to hear others kind of share their experiences. And I'll be giving you the framework on just my opinion on things, and you can take it or leave it on how I think the long-term athletic approach, developing athletes. Just my opinion on that, and what's the best way to go ahead and accomplish that. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed this one. Weekly Word. January 15th, not a special edition. This is just a plain old edition. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, hit me up. I'm looking for more content for these things. So if you have some questions, let me know. I'll feature it next week. I'll see you guys January 22nd. Peace, everybody.